Today is a monumental day because my 2014 V6 Mustang just hit the big 100,000 mile mark.
What a baby.
It's like the retirement age in the car community. Everything you touch is just broke.
Yuck.
And to prevent these parts and accessories from snapping like a twig, we're gonna be talking about the ups and also the downs about owning a Mustang and my own personal secret. Sauce into maintenance tips on the car. And later in this video, we're also going to be talking about why this shitbox has such a special place in my heart even after all these miles on the treadmill. So the very first issue I ran into, even before I hit the 100,000 mile mark, was replacing the water pump. Now this seems like a very common issue among other Mustang enthusiasts out in the community because based off the research I've seen over on YouTube and also on forums as well, it seems like a lot of V6 Mustang owners especially run into a water pump issue. And I could approve of that for myself as well based off experience for my own because at 48 to 50,000 miles, my water pump decided to take a shit on me. Now, it wasn't one of the biggest issues in the world, but it was definitely something I had to replace very quickly because without that water pump, you're gonna catch your temperatures rising very, very hot. And that's the last thing you want, especially when you're driving a car in the hot desert. And the second issue I ended up running into on my car around 75,000 miles-ish, about maybe, I don't know, it was high mileage at that point, was the fans taking a complete dump on me. Now I ended up replacing the pigtail that connects to the fan, but unfortunately after a few days, that bitch burnt right back out. And I had to figure out another alternative. Come to find out, the resistor inside the fan ended up taking a crap, and you have to end up replacing not only the pigtail that got burnt out, but also the fan as well. And once you replace both of those, and the car starts running as it should. Again, another heating issue because when you end up having your car getting a little too hot, it don't like that. It wants to be cool, it wants to be happy, and it's not happy when it's hot. And fortunately for you, this was not too difficult to replace, nor was it too expensive to purchase, but if you just spend a good weekend like a Saturday or Sunday and crack a few cold ones with the boys,
Here you go.
pop that thing back in, take a few pieces, a little bit of hardware out, boop, 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 boop. You'll be back on the road in no time. Now with this third one, I don't know what's more difficult, dealing with an ex or putting in this bullshit. Well, there's no bullshit over there, it's just a wall. And what I ended up having to deal with is replacing the engine harness. Now this may seem like a scary thing to put in, and it is, but it actually isn't too difficult to do, and luckily for you guys, this may not be an issue you are going to deal with. I just think I have a lemon of a car, unfortunately. I ended up having to replace the engine harness because I had a code going for P0053. So what the hell does that mean, brother? I don't know numbers like that. Explain it to me. P0053 is a bank 1 sensor 1 heater resistance code, which pretty much is saying that the heater inside the O2 sensor is not reading accurately. So pretty much what that is telling me is that the air to fuel ratio over on my O2 sensors are not running properly. So it's causing the car to run rich as fuck. And I'm not rich to keep putting more and more gas in my car, so I had to figure this shit out very, very quick.
Man, this stuff was expensive.
And unfortunately, when taking my car to the dealership, they didn't know what the hell to do. If anything, they destroyed my car, and if you want to see that video, I'll put the link up above. Now this next issue leads us into number 4, and number 4 is probably a very, very, very common issue for most of you guys, but maybe it's not very, very common for the other majority of you guys. And the issue I ended up running into for myself, was a fuel pump issue. And you would think,
okay, well, you had to replace the fuel pump, so what?
ironically, my fuel pump worked, but I still had to replace it. Now the question you may be asking now is,
Why'd you have to replace it if it still worked?
well, if you don't want your car smelling like a '69 Camaro no matter where you drive, then you gotta go ahead and replace the fuel pump. I ended up finding out that there was a crack inside the neck of my fuel pump. How did that happen? I don't know.
Yep. Not looking good. So I found the culprit to this motherfucker right here. So watch what happens. You see how it's all wet around that ring right there? As I was telling you guys the other day, I'm gonna wipe this thing. And watch as this thing just spreads around. Watch it not do it while I'm recording. Oh, you can see it right there a little bit. See? Bam.
Said, all right, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and buy a new fuel pump. Fine, we're just gonna go ahead and buy a fuel pump, whatever, I guess, whatever. If that's what we gotta do, that's what we gotta do. We went the cheap way, didn't work, we're just gonna go even cheaper and go buy a Chinese fuel pump. Don't do that. But the final one that we're gonna be talking about is one that I don't think everyone deals with. I think I just got unlucky because when I first got this car, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know shit about cars. I just went ahead and said, fuck it, we're getting it. But the rear main seal, leaky. Very, very leaky. Kind of just developed its own thing over the past 7 years and I just never decided to fix it. And I don't plan on fixing it. I'd rather it just die itself out and I just go ahead and go get something better. And last but not least, one major issue that drives me absolutely fucking nuts every time I look at it, and it's like a slow virus making its way all the way over to the front of the car, is my paint fading. Currently right now, it looks like the crevices of the moon, or a better description of it, it looks like expired eggnog that's been sitting under your bed for 3 Christmases already. It's starting to turn yellow, clear coat's completely chipping off, and it does not look beautiful at all. Thankfully though, it's in the back of the car where I'm hardly at, but it is slowly infecting towards the front of the car where you're starting to see the pillars starting to turn yellow, even to the front pillars where the mirrors are at, where you're starting to see that there's little dots and holes from where the clear coat is starting to burn into place. And it's no fun, it looks like shit, and it makes me jealous whenever I see another Mustang when I'm in the parking lot or wherever I'm at, and they have this beautiful, crisp, amazing gloss finish over on their car. It just makes me want to just take every single panel off your car and just put it on mine and give you my piece of shit parts. And one of the most important topics that most of you guys probably want to look further into to make sure your car lasts up to 100,000 miles, if it hasn't already, is maintenance. And one of the most important things I personally feel that's going to be the secret sauce in order for your car to last up to 100,000 miles. And this is not to say that this is exactly what you have to do in order for it to last to 100,000 miles, but this is something I have personally done to ensure that my car has lasted as long as it has. And the one thing I do is I change my oil every 3,000 miles. Now, could I go a little bit further? Absolutely. Do I choose not to? More often than not. Now, another thing you could also look into as well, if you have a premium model on your Mustang and you have the digital screen dead center in the middle, is you can also see the oil life on your car. If I see mine reaching about 15%, that tells me, you know what, it's time to go ahead and change my oil if I kind of lost track of how many miles I've gone on the car. Because sometimes I do go over 3,000 miles. Sometimes I'm busy, sometimes life gets in the way. And being able to have that digital screen to keep up with the oil life of the car and also having a full synthetic oil in the car also helps with everything overall. Also when changing my oil, and it's not necessary to do, but I just do it anyway, I always clean out my crankcase and I always clean out my fuel system. The reason why I do that is I want to clean out all the gunk and shit that sits inside the gas tank or even inside your engine that has caused buildup over time. And that's the last thing I want. And I want my shit to last as long as it possibly can so I can do the least amount of repairs as possible. So I may throw in seafoam, or my buddy Joe gets this cleaner shit, I forgot the name of it, that he gets over at the dealership, and it is one of the best shits I've ever used, even though there's no statistical data that says it's the best. I just say it's the best because he gave it to me and he works at a dealership. And another fluid that I decided to change on the car, and I felt it was only necessary to do it only one time, and that is the coolant. And the one time that I ended up doing it was when I changed out the water pump. And why did I have to change the coolant when changing out the water pump? Was because all that coolant flushes right out the moment you take off the water pump. So I've only done that one time. I've only changed the oil one time. No, I'm just kidding. No, I didn't. Oof, that would have been bad. Now, another thing that I feel like just everybody should do, no matter what car you have, is making sure all the hardware is tight on your car. Because when you have that shit rolling around and it sounds like everything's about to fall off, it gets scary and it can be very, very dangerous. But just making sure that everything looks good and up to par is a great way to ensure that your vehicle is going to be safe on the road. And to keep moving forward, another thing I decided to go ahead and replace just because I felt like it was about time to do so, and that was changing the spark plugs. I ended up getting some NGK Platinum, maybe? I don't know. The name sounded cool, so that's why I got the spark plugs, and I also had good reviews. And they have been nothing but great on the car. Do I notice any performance issues? No. Do I feel anything great about the car? No. Do I feel like it's helped the car start up a little bit better and it feels like it runs a little bit more better? Possibly. If it's not doing anything wrong, then it's doing something right. And another important factor that I personally believe that each and every single one of you guys should put more emphasis on, if you haven't already, is ensuring that you have up to spec tires. I personally change my tires out every 4 to 5 years because I want to make sure that my safety is my #1 priority. I don't give a shit how many suspension mods I have under my car or how cool the outside of the car looks. It ain't gonna look cool if you get into an accident. Making sure that you have proper tires on your car is very crucial to make sure your safety is your #1 priority. Now, if you are this far into the video, one of the main questions you've probably been really asking yourself is, why do you still own this shit box? If it's been causing you check engine lights, it has fuel pump problems, O2 sensors are going out, and your paint looks like it just someone pissed all over a page of a book and it just sat there for 3 years and got all crusty. Why do you still own this? The main reason why is because I've had this car for 7 years and it was actually my very first car. And it's hard to get rid of your very first car considering the fact that when I didn't know anything about cars, nor did I really know anything about Mustangs, and I had to develop over time, and this was the platform where I learned everything on, it's just hard to let go. Now, it's a different story if I was to go ahead and have a bunch of issues with this car and it was just costing me more money than it is to keep, then that would be a whole different story. But in this scenario, the car is actually very reliable. For the V6 Mustang to have 305 horsepower with 285 foot-pounds of torque, I feel like that's a very good stepping stone, especially if you want to go ahead and add more miles to the car in the future. On top of that as well, I love driving this car around. It doesn't really sound bad for the modifications I've done to the exhaust or even the suspension on the car, where it handles very, very, very nicely. And I highly recommend any of you guys that don't have suspension mods in your car, you are missing out. And if you don't want to get memed on anymore, buy some suspension parts, and I promise you, you don't have to worry about the whole spinning out and the crowd shit anymore that you hear all the time, no matter where you go. Overall, I feel like the car is very reliable and I enjoy driving this thing every single day. Yes, it doesn't have a lot of horsepower to it, but it's just enough where you can have a little bit of fun in the car no matter where you are going. Comment your experiences on what it was like for you if you reached 100,000 miles to help out others in the community who haven't reached 100,000 miles yet. Thank you guys all so much for watching today's video, and I will see you guys in the next one.